Hi guys, Splattered Sugar here, and today I wanted to talk about this poster behind me. Many of you know that have been watching the channel for a while. Once in a while, when I mention comic books or something, I talk about how I used to be into collecting comics. And one of my favorite artists of all time is Jim Lee. Now, Jim Lee is a comic artist that made his bones back on in the late 80s, early 90s. For Marvel Comics, drawing Punisher War Journal and X-Men. And he then went on to help form Image Comics with a lot of other big-name creators back in the day, and created Wildstorm Studios, which then he sold to DC Comics. And now, practically exclusively, when he does his works exclusively for DC, which is very rare to see him doing anything outside of the DC universe these days. But that's just a little quick synopsis of Jim Lee's art history. And what I have here behind me is a poster for the new X-Men when they came out in, they did the Volume 2 back in, I think in '91. Is when they started up the second, they moved on from the Uncanny to the regular X-Men new volume, and Jim Lee and Chris Claremont started doing the first 3-issue story arc, and at the time it was Chris Claremont's leaving the X-Men after writing it for almost 20 years, I think. I think it was 1976 to 1991, somewhere around there. But anyways, this particular poster here is the cover of the second printing of the trade paperback for those first 3 comics collected into, obviously, trade paperback. But this particular piece has so much nostalgia to me, because back in, I think it was 92 or 93, I used to, for work, I would either do yard cleanup or mow people's lawns, stuff like that, generic kid stuff. And my father was actually a big sport card collector, and he knew a lot of people owned shops and stuff. Like, my father just did it as a hobby. Like, on the weekends he would go and go to the shows and get himself a couple tables and sell his products there. But he knew a lot of local comic book and baseball card guys that owned their own stores, and at the time, back in those days, these types of stores were booming. Well, I used to help out a friend of his, sometimes on a Saturday if he needed help at the counter looking at the store. So the first Saturday I ever worked for this guy, I went down, did my 5-hour shift or whatever it was in the AM, and he told me that I forget what the dollar amount was, but like $5 or whatever. You could get $5 or maybe it was $10 or something like that for your time. Or you could choose double that amount in any product I have here. And, being a kid at the time, I'm obviously going to go with the product instead of the cash. And, now we know that this, what the products was, he probably paid a couple cents for, Like this poster was one of these things, obviously, and that I chose. And this he probably got as a promo through his distributor, didn't pay anything for it. But as a child, being 11, 12, 13 years old, like I said, it was between 91, 92, 93. I can't really remember which year. I went with this because I was absolutely in love with Jim Lee's work and a couple of baseball cards at the time. But the cards are irrelevant. This is what's important. So I've had this hanging on my wall, had it thumbtacked and whatnot for over a decade. And, eventually moved out. And back in, I think it was 2004 or 2005, there was a I think it was called the Big Apple Comic Convention in Manhattan. I don't know if you can, how well you can see this. Here's the postcard, advertised postcard for it here. And what happened was I went into my local comic shop. At the time I was still collecting and reading comics avidly. And I saw this postcard sitting at the cashier. And I said to my buddy, and I said, this show's coming, and I saw that Jim Lee himself is going to be there. So I ended up taking the train down there, and finally, after, childhood dream of mine, finally got to meet Jim Lee, and here it is, my first piece of collectible anything, video game, card, comic that I ever earned in my life working, and hung on my wall all these years. And I finally was able to go and, well, how hard, you can see it's pretty hard. Right here is Jim Lee's autograph. I got to go down there and meet Jim Lee. Sadly, though, I was the 5th person in line, and anybody who knows anything about Jim Lee knows that he does sketches for the first 3 people in line, and he didn't. I missed out on that. And overall, he also was held up in traffic, because anybody who lives in New York knows Manhattan's terrible with traffic, and he was held up for about 2.5 hours. So my buddy and I were standing around waiting for him to show up, but I gotta say it was almost at least 4 to 5 hours. And you know, some of you may not agree with that kind of stuff, not your thing, but you know what, I loved it. It was great to meet him. I had a couple other pieces he signed, and you know, it's just, this whole video here is just done for nostalgic purposes. And yeah, I just pulled this out and had to show it off and share the story with you guys. So hope you enjoyed. Here's an old school Jim Lee fan signing off. Take care, everyone. Thanks for watching.